screen for a minute.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's 2018 and another election season in Tempe. I've been through these for about 35 years, so it's another election. Even though this is a midterm election year, you're a part of a very important process, and that's a local election. So we welcome you to City Hall for a special City Council election candidate forum featuring the 6 candidates seeking to fill 3 seats on the next Tempe City Council. The forum is jointly sponsored as a community service by the Tempe Chamber of Commerce and the Tempe Ahwatukee Republic. In the full interest of disclosure, the sponsors wish to note that the Tempe Chamber of Commerce independently endorses candidates, but for tonight's program, the 2 organizations have come together for the sole purpose of providing an opportunity for you to make your own evaluations by getting to see and hear the candidates in a neutral and unbiased setting. My name is Vic Linoff, and I'll serve as moderator for tonight's event. And I want to remind you, your attendance here for the live telecast with viewers at home is vital to a healthy political process. It demonstrates a strong interest in knowing more about who's seeking office and their positions on issues relevant to our community. The challenges Tempe faces have never been greater. The importance of strong leadership and focused vision is critical to our future. This is a particularly important election, too, because one of the 3 seats is open, which means come March 13th, the Tempe City Council will have at least 1 new member. So getting to know the 6 contestants is an imperative, and that's why by the end of the evening, we hope you'll come away with a greater knowledge of who's running and their positions on issues so that you can make a more informed decision when you cast your ballot. I'd like to thank the robust group of candidates for appearing here to face you, our panel, and each other. Jennifer Adams, Robin Arredondo Savage, Sarah Cater, Lauren Kuby, Justin Stewart, and Genevieve Vega. The sponsors have made every effort to assure that tonight's forum will be neutral, balanced, and provide each candidate an equal opportunity for expression of views, resulting in an evening that we trust is both informative and lively, where you are the ultimate judge. So here's how it's going to work. Just before we got underway, the candidate seating positions and initial speaking order were determined by random drawing. After brief introductions, the sponsors will start off with questions for each candidate. Our sponsor panelists are Dawn Hawking, board chair of the Tempe Chamber of Commerce, there, good, and Kerry Waters, Arizona Republic community editor. Following the initial sponsor queries, and as time permits, we will accommodate questions directly from the audience. In all cases, responses are limited to 1 minute. In the interest of fairness, we request that the candidates keep a close eye on the clock throughout the evening and conclude remarks timely. Our official clock watcher is Carly Daniels, who is State Government Relations Associate at the Dorn Policy Group. And if you would articulate your signal there. No, there. Okay, good.
Oh, no.
At any time, the sponsors may interject to request clarification or expansion of a response or pose a follow-up question. So those are the rules, and we're ready to get underway. And before we discuss issues, we might want to just take 30 seconds for each candidate to just briefly introduce themselves. They'll have a chance to give a full minute at the close. But right now, let's just start with introductions. And candidate number 1 is Lauren Kuby.
Thank you. We live in challenging times, and with all the dysfunction in Washington, it's such a nice relief to live in a city like Tempe. So we in Tempe are a caring, compassionate community, and we work together to innovate and make positive change for our community. And I've led this council on campaign finance reform and open government, on creating more sustainable communities, and helping to improve the lives of working families. I'm greatly looking forward to the discussion tonight. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Robin Arredondo Savage. I am currently the vice mayor here in the city of Tempe and have really enjoyed serving this community in a lot of different ways. I'm actually a native of Tempe, a fourth-generation Tempean, and also I'm an Army veteran and a graduate of Mesa Community College and Arizona State University, and also a recovering school board member, which I like to say. And it was been really great to be on the council, to bring my different experiences, my passions, and my relationships to really create some really positive programs that I believe have made a positive impact on a lot of our residents here in Tempe. And I hope to be able to continue that service to each and every one of you.
Hi, my name is Justin Stewart. I'm currently the current chair of the Mitchell Park Neighborhood Association and have been involved with that neighborhood association for the past 5 years. I'm a current member of the Tempe Neighborhoods Together group, and I've been working really hard with neighborhood leaders, neighborhood advocates, and with city staff and city council to try to find solutions that work for neighborhoods and to keep all the neighbors a fabric of Tempe together. And I'm looking forward to discussing further my ideas on how to find solutions for that.
Hi, my name is Genevieve Vega. I'm running to be your next Tempe City Council member as a continuation of my service in the city of Tempe. I currently am on my second board term with the Tempe Community Council, and I've been very actively involved in school bond overrides and civic engagement. I've knocked on a lot of doors in Tempe before running for office, and I really want to focus on working families here in Tempe and their access to services that are available, improving communication, process improvement, and leverage my 20 years of business experience to help get that done. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Cater. I'm a native of Tempe, went to McClintock High School. I now live in a house that my husband and I bought that is next door to the home where I grew up, where my parents still live. And we had our first child in 2016, so my daughter will be 2 in April. I'm also a lawyer, so I work as an attorney at a nonprofit organization called the Arizona Center for Disability Law, fighting for the rights of kids living in poverty who also have disabilities. And I am running to be a champion for working families and make sure we put Tempe families first. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Adams. I'm a longtime Tempe homeowner and volunteer. I worked for the city for 29 years. I was in community services for 14 years. And I was in public works after that, and then facilities maintenance manager for the city. I have a lot of experience working with the city, and I'm going to be able to hit the ground running as a result. And I feel like I'm going to earn your vote, try to earn your vote tonight, so thank you for coming.
Thank you. Great, everybody got that in under 30 seconds. We're off to a good start. There's one other reminder, because we're in an age of technology. Jared McAvoy is here from the Arizona Republic, and he covers Tempe. And for those that are watching at home, and those of you who for some reason want to do it on your cell phone, you can send a, what did we say that was?
Twitter.
A tweet to, you can send a tweet to @Jared, JARED, MACEVOY, and JEROD, MACEVOY. JER, okay. Well, that concludes tonight's forum. We got folks. All right. See how that works. All right, let us begin. We'll start with our sponsor questions, and first up is Carrie Waters of the Arizona Republic.
Recently, we saw Congressman Trent Frank step down after allegations of inappropriate behavior, and the Republic reported last week that Tempe Councilman Colby Granville was terminated from his teaching job after allegations of misconduct. How can you assure Tempe voters that your personal conduct, past and present, won't become an issue?
And we will start this round with Jennifer Adams.
Okay, thank you for the question. I have a long history of working for the city of Tempe. I was actually a probation officer for some time when I was in social services and community services. I have always had the highest standards, ethics, and I can assure that I will continue to march to those orders and exercise high ethics.
And let's see, next, Ms. Kuby.
Oh, it's embarrassing. My daughter's calling. I'm a good mom. Maybe not, since I'm shutting down. So, well, I'm the oldest on the council, so I've been around 60 years, and so I think my character is shown by my lifetime of experience in the way I treat others and the way I work well with others. I play well in the sandbox, and I have the highest standards of integrity. And that's why I work so hard to work on transparency in government, open government issues, because I think it's important to maintain the public trust and have an election system where you reduce the influence of money in politics. So I'm 60, but I've been told I look like a tired 45-year-old. So, be the judge.
Ms. Cater.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think in these times this is especially important because we want those elected to not only represent our values but to live our values as well. And I believe that I have done that in my life, not only in my family life and my commitment to my family, but in my commitment to public service. And as part of being a licensed attorney in the state of Arizona, you have to go through what is actually called a character and fitness evaluation. And you have to be sure to continue to meet those standards every year. And so I'm proud to be doing that and think that that is something that would be reflected also if I were elected.
Ms. Arredondo Savage.
Thank you, Vic. Yeah, absolutely. I think this is one thing that's very important and I think meaningful to a lot of people that are here and not only in the state but across the country. And for me, I come from a family of very strong character and values. It's always been instilled in me to make sure that I am my true self and that I instill those in my children too. I obviously have 2 boys. I've been married for 24 years. And we have a really strong family commitment to this community. And one thing that has always been very important is to make sure that you're open and you're transparent and you're a good listener before you make any decisions. So I think you can look at my record and the things that I've been able to do and the way that I've been able to collaborate and get people to come to the table really shows that I really do care and I'm ethical and I want the best for this community.
Ms. Vega.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's important that we're having this conversation, not just locally, but also nationally. I think this is an important conversation to have for integrity and transparency. I have volunteered in Tempe for many, many years. And I also have 2 children. I have a high schooler, a freshman at McClintock, and a special needs 2nd grader. And my actions are directly impacted on my children. And it's so important to me, not only for my own family, but I'm also a small business owner. And my integrity and my honesty and my ability to work with my clients, I have a fiduciary responsibility to do the right thing for them as well, or I would not be a successful business person. So very, very important to me. And I would also stand on my record of volunteer service in the city.
And Mr. Stewart.
Basically, I was raised by a great loving family. My mother and my father, like, we were a small little family. I was the only child, and they were my supports, and I still love them very much. And I got to know both sets of my grandparents and my great-grandparents, and we all lived within like 20 minutes of each other. So just growing up in that family atmosphere has just been so important to me. And I still talk about like times I had with my parents. And beyond that, like my wife is my rock. She's my best friend. She's amazing, and her and my mom are the 2 most important people in my life right now. And if I let either one of them down, I would be extremely disappointed with myself, and I don't even know where I'd be or how I'd get on with anything.
Oh.
Okay. And from the Tempe Chamber of Commerce, Dawn Hawking.
A growing number of Tempe residents are taking note of the number of city decisions being made outside of the public eye. In your opinion, is there a transparency issue in Tempe? And if so, what should be done about it?
And we'll start this round with Ms. Cater.
I don't know that I would quite call it a transparency issue, but I think it's really important that there be transparency at the city level. And I think to the extent possible, decisions made that affect residents, which is most, should be open to the public and reviewable by the public. And so if a particular meeting can't be open to the public, then you would want whatever decisions were made to be promptly placed online and distributed so that the public could review it. So that is of the utmost importance to me, and I think there may be an issue over time of not necessarily notifying residents in time to give the appropriate feedback.
Ms. Arredondo Savage.
Absolutely. I think that's one thing that we always strive to do, be as transparent as we possibly can. There's been a lot of things that have come to the table that we've actually incorporated in the city. when it comes to open government, things that we're trying to do, and I'm sure Lauren will talk a little bit more about her initiatives that she brought when it comes to Open Gov. But also, we've actually gone out now and talked a little bit more about the budget to our residents. It's really important that they understand where their money is going and how it's being spent. And I think for the city, for myself, what I can say is it's really important to make sure that we're good listeners, we're out there in the community, and we're available, and we have an open door policy. To me, that's part of being transparent too. So we need to continue to do everything that we can to make sure that we're reaching the residents, because what we found is every resident wants to be communicated with a little bit differently, and it's really our responsibility to make sure that we're able to communicate with them in the way that works for them.
Thank you. Ms. Adams.
Yes, the transparency is most important when you're serving the public and you're a public servant. The more open it can be, the better. I do think that we need to work on a transparency. We've had water quality issues last summer, and we weren't notified. We were only notified once, and it continued on for several months after. So I think we do need to improve the transparency, and also our water hydrants have failed at times, and I think that the public really needs to know what's happening and they deserve their safety, health and safety. Thank you.
Ms. Kuby.
I would contend that we have an increase of transparency in our operations, our city operations, in government, and in our elections. And you've seen from the Open Gov, the Open Books process, where you can make any number of queries about our budget process. We've opened up our budget process so every citizen can have an understanding of it, and we have workshops about that. And we also, with our working groups, we have an ever-expanding group of stakeholders we work with. We work on an initiative. And we've actually recently instituted a public forum. We always have work study sessions, and you always have first read and second read, but we started a public forum. So every major initiative we bring, we also have a public forum as well, an online forum. So I'd push back against that and celebrate the transparency and the initiatives we brought forward. And I also have to push back, Jennifer, on what you said about the water, because in excess of transparency, and there's never too much transparency, but when we had that exceedance, we actually notified every citizen in Tempe. We were only legally required to do a small geographic boundary. We notified everyone. A similar exceedance happened in a different city, and they notified a small boundary. So we really reached out to every citizen.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
I do think there's been an increase in transparency on the website and social media and those type of activities through the city of Tempe. I do still think there can be some work getting more voices heard from the neighbors and neighborhoods. There seems to be a minor disconnect between what's going on and the direction that certain neighborhoods want to see Tempe go and where Tempe is going. And I do think there just needs to be a louder voice to the table about this. I do think there's a lot of staff and council members that are working really hard with that. And it's just one of those things, Tempe's doing a lot of growing right now. So it's going to be a difficult situation to get a hold of. There's going to be people that feel that they're left out in the end, even though they were heard. But I do think there can be just a little bit more communication. And I just think my experience, I'd really like to bring that to the table and be able to listen to the neighbors.
Ms. Vega.
Thank you. I agree that there has been a lot of improvements in transparency, but we also know that the way people communicate, the way people receive information and want to be communicated to is changing rapidly. And so those are the types of things that we need to be mindful of as a council. I really believe the best decisions are made from this room, this chamber right here, when you listen to the community. And there are multiple ways of reaching out to the community, and it's not just online, it's not just in person. There's so many options that we have, and we need to be flexible with that. And my undergraduate degree was in organizational and interpersonal communication. And I think there's a certain amount of change management that we need to be mindful of as the city changes rapidly. So that is something that we definitely want to put a better focus on. And also just communication of services. I talk to a lot of residents that don't know the breadth of services that Tempe offers, and I think that's something we can definitely improve upon.
Okay. If you got another question,
I
Dawn.
do.
Okay.
All right. The growing number of workers and developments along Tempe Town Lake and increasing number of ASU students and faculty has had a significant impact on the efficient movement of people and goods through one of the city's most important corridors. From your perspective, what should be done about the existing and future traffic issues at Rio Salado and Rural Road?
And we'll begin this round with Mr. Stewart.
I do think, I mean, basically right now we have more and more construction, more and more jobs, more and more people coming into northern Tempe, and there's just been this massive influx. I think what we need to look at is to start looking at if this development in these areas is going to be the proper way to go in the future with, are we overloading the systems that we already have there? And I think part of the solution outside of just the infrastructure that we have there, part of the solution actually is spreading out the different types of development and not being so dense in one area. I know in the 2040 plan that it calls for that and is voter based, and I just think we need to look at making sure, can this area that we have right now sustain what we already have coming in and even more.
Ms. Arredondo Savage.
Yeah, I'm actually happy to have a conversation about this. I was just over at Marina Heights not too long ago talking with some of the employees about some of the traffic concerns and what the impact of the streetcar might have on Rio Salado Parkway. So you're right, we definitely are growing. A lot of our success actually creates some of these challenges. But one of the things that we've really been working on, and no, we haven't quite mastered it yet when it comes to traffic, is making sure that we're looking at the signal timing and things that we can do to make sure that we are being as efficient and effective as we can with that. We're actually going to be putting in some dedicated turn lanes, which will actually help when it comes to getting off of Rio Salado, because it's not necessarily getting to work, it's leaving work. And another thing I think we can do a little bit better is create awareness of all the multimodal types of transportation that we have. We have park and rides, we have bike share, we have the streetcar coming online, we have light rail, and just really encourage people to be able to utilize some of those different modes and methods that they may not even know about. So those would be some of the things that I would work for.
Ms. Vega.
Thank you. I agree with the concept of multimodal transportation. I think when we have a good, solid infrastructure for transportation, that's key to getting people out of their cars, right, and using other transportation options. I also think there's some. I jokingly said in a meeting earlier this week, or last week rather, we need to look at other ways of getting in and out of the city. And I jokingly said, well, what about a zip line across Tempe Town Lake? That's obviously not a great option, but there are ferry options. It's possible, I guess, if it's a revenue producer. There's ferry options. I would love to see more underpasses for pedestrians and bikes to be friendly to get the traffic off the streets. I would love to look at bridges over our busiest intersections so it doesn't slow the traffic down and things like that. And I think we can incorporate some really fantastic ideas for art, local artists and things like that. So really thinking of different options outside of our current stable.
Yes, thank you. When I was in Public Works, I was Deputy Public Works Director for quite some time, and we were building Line Section 5, which was the light rail section. And we talked about transportation a lot. And we're going to need to really increase our buses, our orbits. I don't know how much the streetcar is going to help us, but I'm hoping it will help relieve some of the pressure. And also the encourage light rail use and the park and rides. And we need to communicate too with the employers. So they consider having staggered start times and end times, so we can move the traffic also, relieve some of that 8 to 5 congestion. And a lot of it's a communication, and just in communication with the employers. So that's how I would do it.
Ms. Kuby.
Yes, so we can't increase the capacity along Rio Salado and rural. That's not a possibility. So we have to look at ways to manage and alleviate the traffic. And Robin Arredondo Savage mentioned a lot of the ways we can do that. And we also have to look towards the future and envision, Tempe 20, 30 years from now. So we need to look at, and we started with our small area transportation study to look at larger projects, pedestrian and bike crossings that are raised on bridges, and signal optimization that really takes advantage of the best and greatest technology that we have out there. And it's a painful time of growth, and we need to manage it much better. But we have the most amazing professional traffic engineers in our city that really listen, and they sit down with the businesses and sit down with citizens who have individual problems with intersections. But we are looking at a Vision Zero plan, so where we are committing to no traffic fatalities, no bike or pedestrian fatalities. We want to be a Vision Zero city, and that's an exciting proposition for our city.
Ms. Cater.
Thank you for the question. I think it's really important, and it's definitely something I've been hearing at the door about frustration about that congestion. And I think part of that also is adequate data gathering on the front end in terms of when that growth happens so quickly, and we haven't talked enough to residents about what that would look like and the people who work down there and what that means for them and their commute. But as others have said, I echo the multimodal approach, which includes bike lanes and the streetcar and light rail and bus in orbit, which will address some of the traffic. And I think part of that also is making public transportation more affordable for working families and Tempe families. The more affordable it is, the more it will be used and the more traffic will be reduced.
Okay, let's go back to the Arizona Republic. Carrie Waters.
Okay, so the last question had to do with Tempe's success in attracting business, and there certainly is a boom going on in Tempe, which kind of leads to the question of some have been critical of the city's use of tax breaks to attract new companies, new businesses. Most recently, a proposed hotel and conference center received a sales tax abatement that will extend many years. So my question, as a council member, where would you stand on the use of tax incentives or tax breaks to bring in development?
And let's begin this round with Ms. Vega.
Thank you for the question. Yes, Tempe is an exciting place to be right now with a lot of growth. And I think using the tax breaks, I think we need to be very careful about this. Tempe is a very desirable city to live in, but I'm also mindful of it's a case-by-case situation. And so for example, with the Omni, that was a situation where that piece of property wasn't earning any tax revenue or very, very little at the time, and it was done in a rebate, which I think is really important. That gives an option for it to be paid back sooner than the time that was allotted for it. And so there's a lot of benefits to be had, but we do need to use it very, very sparingly. It's one of the tools that cities are able to use to attract businesses, and businesses have to go back and get financing and things like that for projects. And I think it's just important that we have council members who understand can take a critical look at every number on the page and be able to move forward with the project.
Mr. Stewart.
I honestly believe the use of tax rebates, GIPLETs, tax abatement, we really need to take a really hard, close look at this and maybe possibly slow it down a bit and make sure it's only used in extreme situations that are really going to work for the city. A lot of the neighbors are really confused about why do big businesses get all this assistance when we're in our homes and we still have to pay our 30-year lease. And I understand business brings in much revenue, but how much revenue is it bringing in the end if they get an 8-year tax break, 10-year tax break, a 60-year tax break, or a tax relief rebate that could be paid back sooner. But regardless, I just think we really need to make sure this is the direction that we want to go. There's a lot of development right now. Tempe has the most GIPLETs outside the valley right now, and we just have to make sure this is it going to work? 30 projects at once, see if it works or not. I'd rather kind of phase it in and see if it does work and go from there.
Thank you. Ms. Kuby.
So you have to know that the subsidy, the tax rebates, it applies to the conference center, so not to the hotel. When you think about a conference center and what that contributes to the economy, it brings in about $32 million a year. When you have 1,000 conference goers, convention goers, they're not staying put on the corner of Mill University. They're spreading out the city and shopping at local businesses and dining out at local restaurants. So the $21 million, it's performance-based tax rebate, is a small comparison to what we'll receive in economic benefits. And there's also the fact that we get the arts tax, we get the transit tax, and there'll be assessed a streetcar assessment, which will help us to fund our streetcars so that Tempe taxpayers are held harmless in the development of the streetcar. It's important to know with all of this, I wasn't sure how I was going to vote on that decision on the Omni, because I wanted to see that we had highly skilled workers building those buildings. And we finally reached an agreement, and the Omni reached an agreement with the trades so that we have apprentice workers who graduate as journeymen from apprentice programs. And that construction is going to benefit our society for a long time to come.
Thank you. Ms. Arredondo Savage.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would say a couple of things when it comes to actually having tools to create new development in the city of Tempe. We don't have very many of them, so we need to be very selective. It does need to be case by case, and we have to really look at what the return on investment is. We're not competing with our sister cities. We're actually competing with cities in other states. So it's really important that we are selective and we understand what the return on investment is. So the reality of it is the marketplace never would have been built. I'm sure many of you have enjoyed going to the marketplace and shopping there. That would have never happened without having an incentive. The Arizona Mills Mall and the Omni Center, which is actually going to bring a 4-star hotel that the majority of everybody downtown wanted that to come in to be able to complement what Tempe is really all about. So it really comes down to me is about making sure the return on investment is there and appropriate as you give the incentive. It needs to bring something to the community that we don't already have or something that we really want, whether it's a grocery store, whether it's more parking, or whether it's a conference center. It's just really important that you weigh it out and understand that the return on investment is a positive one.
Ms. Cater.
I really cannot see that.
Thank you. I think my main perspective is that Tempe families have to come first. And so we're looking, and when we're assessing if this works, it can't just be, is there growth in the city in one particular area, or is this a benefit to these out-of-state developers, but are Tempe families benefiting? Unfortunately, I think the poverty rate in Tempe is over 20%, and I don't think we've seen the return to those families getting out of poverty that we'd like to see. So I do think that there may be appropriate use of these tax breaks, but they really need to be highly scrutinized. And I would really like to see a focus on giving breaks to local businesses in Tempe that are hiring workers that live in Tempe and then putting the money back into the city.
Thank you. And Ms. Adams.
Yes, I think it really determines, we need to have a really close look at all of these projects case by case, because it really depends. I think that we're a little bit out of balance personally with giving the tax rebates, and I think we need to be careful of that. The other side of the coin is that we can't collect any property taxes on ASU property. So you have to be mindful of that. So the people that will come in will spend money and hopefully support our small businesses, which I'm a huge proponent of, and also hopefully improve our neighborhoods. And we need to make sure we include the neighborhoods in these decisions and these discussions early on, not after the fact. So that's really important. Also, Lauren had mentioned about a conference center. We do need a conference center, so that's another plus to this project, but we just need to make sure that we're not giving away the farm when we have these projects come in.
Thank you. And let's take a break and try one from the audience. Are we ready, sir?
Sure. I'm David Palmer. I'm a 55-year resident of Tempe, and I currently have sort of a problem with quality of life in Tempe. I think it's a fantastic place in Tempe. I've seen it grow tremendously. I have high regard for the current mayor and council for the economic growth that we've had, but I have real questions about traffic safety. You already covered that, but I do wonder, after living here 55 years, if the quality of life in Tempe, do I want to retire here? So I really think that medical services need to be addressed, security services need to be addressed, and relationships with Tempe and ASU, and how is the quality of life going to improve?
Thank you, sir. Let's start with Ms. Kuby.
You might hear me often talk about sustainability. Sustainability to me is about livability and just increasing the livability of a city. And my vision is not just for today, but for tomorrow and future generations. And that's why when we think about our transportation network, we really have to think about a different system. I was driving behind an autonomous vehicle tonight, and it was interesting how it was stopping way shorter than I would have stopped and staying much longer than I would have stayed. We really have to be planning more for the future and not just looking for the immediate sort of fix. And that's my concern as a council member. I know when you think about livability, I think one of the greatest legacies this council can leave is increasing our shade in our city. And we are now at 13% shade. We're going to get to 26% by the year 2040, double our shade. That is going to make a more livable city because we're getting hotter and hotter and drier. So we need to be thinking about how we can make our city more livable for every resident in the city.
Thank you. Ms. Cater.
Yeah, I think this is such an important question and speaks to what I was trying to say in the last question, which is we have to think about Tempe families and your family and what that means to live here and live your life here. My parents have lived here for over 40 years. I'm now raising my family here and raising my child here. And so we have to think about, are the Tempe families benefiting from the decisions that the council is making? And I think thinking about the growth that's occurred, some of it is benefiting us, but much of it is benefiting out-of-state developers. And so I think what I would like to bring to the council is making sure that families are heard, that neighborhoods are heard, that when you come, you feel that your voice is heard, and that the council's decision reflect the needs of the community, not just short-term, but long-term as well.
Mr. Stewart.
I think it just comes down to open communication with what the public wants and having real meaningful input from the community, not just input, but meaningful input, and truly figuring out what they do want and what makes life great. I mean, in a different situation, I know plenty of residents that have rented for 20 years. They see their rent going up $200 a year, $300 a year, and all of a sudden the people that we're trying to keep here in Tempe are leaving. They might be a small business owner, they might have just started a family, and to hear your story where a 55-year resident now thinking about leaving or seeing a degrading life, I think they go hand in hand, and there's something going on and something's not being heard, and we just have to make sure that we're truly listening and understand what direction to go and just not focus on possibly the northwest neighborhoods of downtown Tempe or Mill Avenue, but everyone.
Thank you. Ms. Adams.
Yes, well, safety needs to be first in our community. That's the most important thing we can have. We have the second highest violent crime rate in the valley. Tempe does, just behind Phoenix. So we have to make sure that we're having safe environments to raise our children. And I also think that we need to be mindful of how we're communicating with our residents and make sure that we're having early communications. For example, the water rate hike that went into effect earlier, it's caused a lot of people, when I've gone to thousands of doors now, knocking on doors, people are thinking about selling their houses and leaving our community because of the water rates. That's a big problem. So I think we really need to be careful that we're communicating with the residents and find out what they need, and so we can have a safe and healthy environment for our community.
Ms. Vega.
Yes, thank you. It is an important question. Tempe is the place I chose to raise my family because of the values that make Tempe special, like openness and diversity, but it's also the quality of life. And so I think there's a few things. I mentioned before I'm on the Tempe Community Council Board of Directors, and we just completed a community needs assessment. And we found, you mentioned access to health care, we found that an underlying theme that there is a lack of access to mental health care, to public health care, and this is part of the bigger picture. This is part of, I believe, the root cause of some of the human services challenges we see in our city, and we need to really get at some of those issues, really to echo what everyone's saying, listen to the community, talk to people about what those root causes are, what we're seeing in the neighborhoods. And that is a council member's job, is to connect with the community and bring that voice back to this room here to make decisions. And this is something that we should be very mindful of with the long-term prosperity of Tempe in mind.
Ms. Arredondo Savage.
Thank you, Vic. Yes, Tim, I definitely think you should stay here, for sure. There's no question in my mind. I will say, my parents, I was born and raised in the city of Tempe, and I still live in the same neighborhood where I grew up. My parents still live in the same house where we were raised. And so, to me, it is really all about the quality of life, making sure that our kids and the kids that are coming after them, too, have an exceptional quality of life. So, I think in order to do that, it's really important that the council listen to what the needs are of our residents. And we try to do that. We have a citizen satisfaction survey. Maybe some of you have actually filled that out in the past. And it's really important that the city take that to heart and use that in the budget making process. Last year, we had some concerns about bulk trash. You guys might have made something about bulk trash, about code enforcement. And then what we did, we were able to allocate dollars to be able to make some changes in those areas. And then, as much as I completely agree that public safety is very important, we need to make sure that public safety has all the resources that they need to be efficient and effective, that our EMS and our fire are there whenever anybody needs it. Darn it. That's it. Some good stuff to say. I just cannot see that thing.
All right.
I know. I'm like, I can't see it. Lauren and Jeanette, I got to move.
You folks are doing very well with the time. I'm proud of you. Let's go back to one of the sponsors, Dawn Hocking from the Tempe Chamber.
The city of Tempe has started a pre-K program. How will this be sustainable? And will the business community and citizens be expected to fund it, or is there an alternative funding source? Should this be a function of the city of Tempe or the school districts?
And we'll start this round with Ms. Adams.
Yes, so 90% of child's brains are developed by the time they're 5 years old. So it's very important that we have the children's opportunity to attend preschool. However, I don't think that the city should be in the business of funding it. Everything needs to be sustainable, and part of sustainability is people, profit, and planet. And we came into this agreement. I think it was quickly put through without a lot of resident feedback. And I think that we need to really look at how we're going to pay for this service. Also, I met with a lot of the teachers and the people in the experts in education, and they were upset that they weren't more included in the process. And so I think we need to figure out how we can turn this over to the schools.
Ms. Kuby.
I wish we did have a better partner with our state government, but we don't. We started this process 2 years ago, and we discovered that 2/3 of our kids were not ready for kindergarten. And so David Shapira led this effort and got funding to study the issue. And over the course of, we had 13 meetings, 13 different public meetings, and we established 20 classrooms of 18 students. And we have pre-K, not just a pre-K, but before care and after care and summer care. And it's making such a difference in the lives of women and families and working families in Tempe. So I would say that it was really important that we jump-started this, that if we can't do it, whose roadhouse is it? Is it the state government? Well, they're not doing it. And obviously the school boards don't have the authority or their money to do it. But Tempe could step in, and we can improve the lives of our residents. And it takes a little bit of a bite out of those high rents when you have free pre-K access. And what we're going to do after we're studying with ASU, we're conducting control studies, and we're going to come back to the voters possibly and say, do you want to fund this, extend this at this limited fashion, or do we want to expand it throughout the city?
Thank you. Ms. Cater.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most important things that the city has done lately. I know the evidence shows that when we educate our young kids, their outcomes throughout their life just increase exponentially. So I think it's super important. I understand that we want to be able to fund this program, and that's part of my commitment to evaluate where the funding is coming from and where we're putting our priorities in the city. And I think if we can prioritize correctly, there will be funding for this program without having to increase taxes for anybody.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
I'll say it right now, I completely applaud the program and that is passed and all the work done by council on that program and the work that David Shapiro did on it and your work, Lauren, and everyone. I think it's a great program. You know, until, like, to echo what Lauren said, until we get some help from the state or the federal level and we start seeing a different type of activism from them, I think it comes down to our city to help where we can. Right now, schools are drastically underfunded at a state level, and to be able to help out with a preschool program to get students ready for schools and to give, like, working families a little bit of relief, and to give, like Lauren mentioned, single moms a little bit of relief, or just anyone, I think it's just an increasingly important program. And I think there are ways to find funding for this, and it might come from some previous tax rebates we've talked about, and everything, but I think we can further this program.
Thank you. Ms. Arredondo Savage.
Yeah, thank you, Vic. I will say, first and foremost, I am a big advocate for education and the role that the city can actually play to help fill some of those gaps and the challenges that our school districts are having. Being a child of two educators, and also being a recovering school board member, I realize that there are some challenges that our educational institutions are facing, and I really do think that there is a place that the cities can step in and help do that. One of the things when this was actually brought to the council, was one that had a few questions, and I was really concerned about the process and about the transparency. I understand that there was 13 meetings, but there was no real proactive outreach. And I just wanted to make sure that if we were going to do a 2-year, $5 million pilot program, that everybody really bought into that, and that's what our community wanted to do. And also the sustainability of being able to find that funding to continue that program after year 2, to me was really important. But I will say this, I'm a big advocate of education. I'm a big advocate of preschools. I think they're very helpful and very important to when it comes to the cradle to career success.
Ms. Vega.
Yes, thank you. I am a big fan of the Free Pre program as well. I was raised by a single mom, and I wouldn't be here without my education. And so, and I've also been that parent who had to decide if I could afford childcare or if I could afford to go back to work. Because this is a real need. This is something that is good for our economy. It keeps working families with the support that they need. I am that family that knows what it's like to balance rising rental costs and student loan debt and childcare and all the things that it takes to raise a family in Tempe. So I think this is a very important program. The sustainability of it is a challenge as far as, you know, where does the money come? We've had a lot of growth in Tempe, and we've been able to fund this program for that. And I would, if we made any major funding decision, that's something that would need to go back to the voters in Tempe. I think that's something we need to get a lot of resident input on. And I'm very excited to see the results of this pilot study.
Thank you. And let's go to our audience for another question. Sir, if you want to come up to the microphone there.
My name is Philip Yates, and I'm a president of a neighborhood association, the Riverside Neighborhood Association, and I am a fifth-generation Tempean. So I have a lot of experience talking to people throughout the valley and throughout Tempe about the past, and my friends and my family, they all live around me. And there has been a lot of development that has been brought to the city council and to the mayor, and a lot of it is high-density development. And that kind of development, I believe, will probably, in a negative way, impact our neighborhoods surrounding the inner city. And I would just like to know where everybody stands on high-density inner city development.
Thank you for that question. Ms. Arredondo Savage.
Philip, I think you got me by 1 generation, so 5 generations, I only got 4. But, yeah, I definitely agree, and I understand a lot of people's concerns when it comes to density. I mean, the reality of it is in the city of Tempe, we are landlocked, and there's no way that we're going to be able to grow out anymore. So if we are going to grow, we are going to have to grow up or do a lot of redevelopment. But as we do that, it's really, really important that we continue to have buy-in from the neighborhoods, the surrounding neighborhoods, that we incorporate what we're doing with our character areas. Many of you have participated in the character area process. Because like I said earlier, I think our success in the development and the growth really does create some of our challenges. So, and to me, that challenge is hanging on to the character and the quality of life in Tempe, and we need to make sure that we continue to do that. So the only way we can make sure that we do that is that we are incorporating our neighbors, the residents that will be impacted in the decision-making process.
Thank you. Ms. Vega.
Yes, so here, I'm going to try and be nerdy in 1 minute, but I think one of the things that's a challenge is the process by which we evaluate development opportunities. And I think we need to really work with our neighborhood groups. Perhaps that's a character area conversation that we need to have to establish some guidelines and processes and a framework by which we review these processes so that the neighborhoods know what's coming. And frankly, so the developers and the businesses know what steps that they need to follow and how much public input do they need to get. And I think we don't have this process in writing today. We don't have a checklist by which design standards or density or anything like that is really kind of given in each of the areas. And I think when we have more established processes and better communication with those neighborhood groups, it'll be a lot easier to evaluate these situations and really follow what's important to the neighborhoods and what kind of density the neighborhoods want to see.
Ms. Adams.
Yes, thank you. So one of my platforms is empowering neighborhoods in the decision-making processes, and this development is a perfect example. We really need to reach out to the neighborhoods and not necessarily just postcards in the mail, but social media, all the means of communication that we can to reach out to them to find out what they would like to see. Do they really want a high-rise in their backyard with people looking down into their backyard? So that's come up when I've canvassed the neighborhoods, and so I think we need to be really mindful about having a balance between the developers and the neighborhoods. And that can be done. It's been done in a lot of different communities throughout the country. So we just need to look at best practices and how we can implement those in our great city.
Thank you. Ms. Cubey.
So, development is very context specific, and when we had a developer who wanted to build a 13-story building on a buffer zone that was by the general plan, so we do have the general plan. The general plan said 9 stories, we rejected it. A 20-story dorm rented out by the bed, we rejected it. So it's very much context specific, I would say. But what I'm really worried about, instead of echoing everyone here, I'd like to say I'm very worried about historic preservation. I have a background in public history, and Harrington Burchett House is under threat. We need to preserve what is uniquely Tempe. And we all know that Monte's La Casa Vieja, Hayden House, is also under threat. The development there has been delayed and pushed back, and it's already set for phase 2 development if that development does actually find reality. So I'm very worried about maintaining our inner core Tempe's history and not letting those very historic properties fall into ruin.
Thank you. Ms. Cater.
Thank you for your question, and to your family for living here for 5 generations. That's amazing. I do echo other people's statements about listening to residents and making sure that they're part of the process in deciding when the high-density development can occur in a particular area. But I think it's a bigger picture issue. Oftentimes high-density housing can mean affordable housing, which can be important for certain families who may not be able to buy a home. And I think we have to think about that in terms of a new generation may be less interested or less of a commitment to buying a home as a mark of success in their life. But also for those that want to buy a home and can't afford it, what is Tempe doing to help a working family in order so that they can achieve that goal, and then maybe less high-density housing might be necessary. So it's making sure we're doing the things so that families are in positions that they can purchase a home if they want to.
And Mr. Stewart.
So I've walked your neighborhood. I've walked Riverside. Riverside is ground zero of everything that's wrong with high development and what has been going on in just like pieces, parts over the last 10 or 15 years. I'd love to see some sort of like character study done to see what went wrong there. I've talked to your neighbors. I've talked to your neighborhood board. And it's just all about sticking to the 2040 plan that was decided by the voters. And right now I'm currently working on the character area 3 plan and trying to get some of these things worked out. We need to stop just granting PAD overlays. We need to stop granting PADs to developers. They have to stick within the rules. We all have to stick in the rules, and they should stick in the rules. We need to protect, preserve, and rehabilitate the neighborhoods. I mean, the housing that has gone to your neighborhood, those are $450,000 apartments. I know families going to move into there. It's not affordable housing. It's not workforce housing. Every development that has gone in there is a $450,000 development, 6 or 8 condos, and that is ground zero, and I really appreciate the question.
Thank you. Back to our sponsor panel, Carrie Waters from the Arizona Republic.
Let's kind of continue with preservation. We started down that path. The oldest part of Tempe, its downtown area, faces the most intense redevelopment pressures. Please tell us, if you would, support enhanced preservation mechanisms in downtown Tempe, and specifically, what do you have in mind? How would you do it?
And let's start with Ms. Cater, because she's writing.
Yeah, I think being a native of Tempe, preserving the historic nature of the city is something that one of the things that's most important to me. I remember as a kid when Changing Hands was downtown on Mill Avenue, and my dad used to take me to the bookstore every week. And so I think specifically we have to make sure the city prioritizes preserving those aspects of Tempe that make it the home that we hold so dear. And I think the city needs to bring those things to the council meetings and to the individuals and the residents, and make sure we're inviting those neighborhoods that care about those places and getting their input.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
I have a whole bunch of ideas for this, so I'll try to make them brief. I was involved with city staff and with council to bring down the R3 to R2 initiative, residential zone 3 to residential zone 2. 10 properties decided they wanted to do that in the Maple Ash neighborhood. Six of them were historically eligible properties, which means these properties will be preserved because they're because their owners want them to be preserved. I think to save neighborhoods in general, especially the historic ones, we need to have a village planning committee and have some like a lower input before going to the DRC from the neighbors to see if these type of developments actually fit there. Also, the city staff has been really great and has been working really hard with actually getting historical preservation and working with neighborhoods to get historical preservation, and I think we need to continue doing that as well.
Thank you. Ms. Arredondo Savage.
Yeah, thank you, Vic. Absolutely. I think it's really important that we honor the history of the city of Tempe because that is who we are. And I would say that the council has been pretty mindful of that as we move forward. Of course, we have the Hayden House that we've been working on and really trying to hold the developers' feet to the fire when we realized that there were some issues and that we knew that they could do better. And then also when it comes to the flour mill, as that moves forward in development, I think it's going to be really important that they continue to hold on to what that history means to the city of Tempe, not only just within the old building itself, but also the silos too. And that's what they're planning to do. So we should be pretty excited to see that. And I also agree too with what Justin has to say in regards to encouraging our residents to at least have the awareness of a historic designation if that's something that they choose to do. And I think that we can help be the conduit to that. So I think it really is the character of who Tempe is. I mean, we're not overly old as some of our others, but we've been here a really long time, and Tempe has a lot of really great history that makes us who we are.
Ms. Vega.
I would definitely support enhanced preservation in Tempe. I'm a big fan of adaptive reuse as opposed to just leveling buildings and starting from scratch. So I think that's something we should be incentivizing as a city. I also think, that is a great tool for cities to be able to use to incentivize businesses to to use historic buildings, for residents to maintain historic properties and things like that. We should be making that process as easy as possible and something that people would be looking for when it comes time to purchasing those properties as the case may come.
Ms. Adams.
Yes, Tempe is a great city, and we don't want to lose the spirit of Tempe, and I think that historic preservation is a must. When I was a facilities manager for the city, we managed the Hackett House, the Peterson House, the Rodriguez House, to name a few of the historic properties. And when the kids would come in to tour those buildings, their eyes would light up when they would see how it used to be. And it's such a great way to educate them. And we need to have that throughout the city. And I just think it's really important to not forget your history.
Thank you. And Ms. Cubey.
So we have a very talented Historic Preservation Commission, and they give us valuable advice. But we really need to put some skin in the game. Talking about Harrington Burkett House, it's owned by ASU. They put in $400,000 of improvements. We need to look at a way to preserve that really important property, and it can't possibly be moved. It's too fragile to be moved. In the case of Montes, like Casa Vieja, we have to have a long-term management plan. It's not enough to have these little one-off improvements where we keep coming back to the developer and making sure that they're fixing a problem that needs to be fixed. And as far as adaptive reuse goes, we've used that as a great tool in the city. And I want to thank Councilmember Arredondo Savage and the Honorable Corey Woods for developing that adaptive reuse ordinance back about 3 or 4 years ago, because it's really been a boon for the city. So it's really important that we maintain our historic heritage and work with that advisory commission, because it has experts from ASU, from the community, and we just have to listen and take their advice.
Thank you. Let's go back to the audience. Sir, do you have a question?
Hello, my name is John Kristoff. I'm a PhD student at Arizona State University. I've lived here for 2 years now. I take the exact opposite stance from both the previous two questions, so we'll let that go as it wills. First of all, how many of you regularly use the transit system here in Tempe, whether it's light rail, regular buses, BRT, or paratransit services? None of you? Okay.
Right, periodically.
Okay.
Regularly.
I don't own a car. I am entirely reliant on the transit system here in Tempe to get to work and anywhere else I want to go. And with the exception of the 72 route and the light rail and the orbit, it is completely inadequate. Service frequencies every 30 minutes is unheard of in every city I've ever lived in prior to this point, and it is completely inhumane during the summer when temperatures exceed 110 degrees and you have to wait for a 30-minute late bus on a 30-minute frequency. So bearing that stress in mind, I'm told frequently the reason we can't build more frequent transit systems is because the density to support it. The thing is, Building dense housing eliminates half the energy and water costs. And here in a city as hot as this, it cuts the HVAC costs down to 25% of what they previously would be. We need more dense transit-oriented development to support the kind of infrastructure needed for those of us who do not want to have to own a vehicle to access the life that Tempe offers. So I would ask for all of you, open-ended question, do you support the kind of density necessary to make this happen? And if so, how do you balance that with the existing residents' requests to keep the character of the city intact?
Thank you. Let's begin with Mr. Stewart.
And I think it comes down to we have to have some sort of like a smart density plan put in place before we can even put down, as you mentioned, put down more rail. I mean, what we're missing right now is an extreme. We need to connect. We need to connect South Tempe's commercial zones to North Tempe's commercial zone desperately. The original streetcar plan would have been genius for that. It would have been great just to go down from Rio Salado down to Southern as planned, and we're told because of federal funding we couldn't do that because it wasn't dense enough. Yet if you look along much of that area, I don't have the matrix in front of me for how dense it is, but if you look along that area, I mean, there's a large amount of apartment complexes between Alameda and Southern, and I mean, if we can get smart density that's affordable, I mean, let's do it. I mean, the thing is, we're not getting that. We're getting density that's $450,000 a unit.
Thank you. Ms. Arredondo Savage.
Yeah, I definitely think it comes down to creating some type of a balance. We definitely need to do that. One of the things that we do when we do developments is we always do a traffic study. And what we're just starting to do now is exactly what you were talking about, because we don't go beyond just the traffic and the cars. We're now incorporating bikes and pedestrians and bus routes to make sure when we do the development that they're still as efficient and effective as they possibly can be. And that's new. That's something that we haven't done before. Another thing that we're actually working on too with ASU is we actually did like an urban core traffic study of downtown to try to figure out how we can move people better. Because obviously what we're doing in the downtown area with all the density that's happening, it's definitely been a challenge. So they've created a couple of really short-term goals and long-term goals, but I think together with the partnership with ASU, we'll be able to do that, and you'll see some changes probably pretty soon.
Ms. Adams.
Yes, we need more transportation. I do ride the light rail regularly, which I love to do light rail, and but we do need more transportation. And we also need more transportation in South Tempe. The Orbit only goes to Elliott now, and we need to take it all the way down to Warner, so those folks down there can also ride the Orbit down. I have a lot of people that I've canvassed that have said that if they could, if Orbit went all the way down to Warner, they would ride it regularly and visit downtown Tempe much more frequently, because obviously there's a complaint about the parking when they do come down. So I think that we need to do a lot better with the transportation, and that is our only way to move people in the future with this high-density housing that's going in.
Thank you. Ms. Cubey.
I just want to ask, do you ride a bike at all, or
I have a bike, but for certain journeys, it is not possible to ride a bike. Sure. This is required. You have to remember our blocks are a mile on a side, so if you try to get a substitute bus for the one that's not running on your given day, you have to go a mile out of your way.
Let's not take her out of her minute.
We have 17,000 bike boardings on McClintock every month, and we're having an increased, we're seeing an increased use of electric bikes. And I think that's really the wave of the future. Electric bikes enable you, even less mobile people, to be able to use a really efficient mode of transportation. And I don't mean to minimize your concern. I think we need to increase neighborhood circulators. So the Orbit's meant to be a neighborhood circulator. And one of the next big transportation projects we want to look at is a bus rapid transit along Rural Road. So that's an important addition. When I talk about density, though, like I said, it's context specific. It really does belong in the downtown, and we need to build as sustainably as possible. We need to build in a way that you can walk from point A to point B and completely in shade, because shade is a transportation issue.
Thank you. Ms. Vega.
Yes, I am a big advocate for transit-oriented development, particularly when it's affordable and workforce housing. I think that I would love to see other things too to address some of those concerns that you had. I would love to use Internet of Things to kind of, when you call an Uber ride or a Lyft ride, you can see where that car is and when it's going to come. So that's a relatively inexpensive technology that helps predictability for some of our routes, and I would love to see something like that utilized, particularly for our Orbit system. I also think improvements in the city as far as the walkability and things like that. I think that is something we can definitely improve upon through urban forestry and just being really thoughtful about our dense areas and the transportation options that we have available to us there. And that was another reason why I mentioned before, I would love to see things like underpasses and things like that to make our community more livable, more easy to get through. Sorry,
Ms.
I'm looking
Cater.
at the timer.
I think it's a super important question. Thank you for asking it. And we know that these transportation issues disproportionately affect people living in poverty who can't afford another option, and also disincentivizes us, those who maybe have a car but would take public transit. My work is on the light rail, and I would take public transit if I didn't have to wait 30 minutes in the heat in the summer. So I think it's super important, and I think if there's a way, we need to not necessarily tie reducing that transit time to high density, because you're not necessarily going to have high density in my neighborhood. It's probably just not going to happen. And so I think we need to find a way. I think a rapid bus on Roll Road is a great idea, and I just think we need to find better ways to reduce that wait time, because we have to acknowledge we live in Tempe and it's super hot, and there have to be faster ways, and I think the city needs to really work on that.
Thank you. Back to our sponsor panel, Dawn
Right.
Hocking from the Tempe Chamber.
So economic development is consistently cited by voters and businesses as one of their top local issues. Please give your top 1 or 2 economic development goals if you were elected.
Thank you. And let's start this round with Ms. Vega.
Yes, thank you. So as a small business owner in Tempe, I think if we focus on the local first model, improving access to permits and making it easy to do business, that is something I would really love to look at for my time on council. This is, small businesses do not have the same resources as big businesses. And so the ability for them to open a business and run a business in Tempe should be as easy as possible. That's what we should be incentivizing. I also think that human services programs are really key to getting our working families the stability they need. Tempe Community Council does free tax prep, and those kinds of things bring $2 million of tax refunds right back to our own city. And those are the kinds of things that we should be looking at as ways that we can keep working families prosperous and give them the resources they need to be able to live here and work here.
Thank you. Ms. Adams.
Yes, small businesses are at the heart of our community. They not only do you get to know your neighbors, you increase your safety when you have small businesses that you can go to and you know your neighbors there, and it just is really, really important for economic development. So there has to be a balance. We have to take care of our small businesses and make it easier for small businesses to compete in this environment, make it easier for them to get their permits. I've heard a lot of complaints from small business owners that they have a hard time getting permits, they have a hard time getting started in the city. I think that we need to have an economic professional in our economic development department that focuses on small businesses, so that when a new small business owner comes in, they have one person that they can meet with that can help them get through the whole process and get their small business started.
Thank you. Ms. Kuby.
So I think Genevieve Vega really keyed in on something, and it's developing a local first economy is one of the single biggest things we can do to spark economic development and to keep the monies that we spend inside of our city and inside of our region. That's a really important tool. And also, I think by developing a clean energy economy, moving towards a solar economy, and developing other modes of transportation and building clean energy, green building, clean energy building would really help us in that way. And let's face it, ASU is right in the center of our town, and ASU is the leading university in innovation and entrepreneurship, and we have embraced that model. We're doing a lot in encouraging businesses to develop entrepreneurs to thrive in our city, and we have to continue with that model as well.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
One of the things that I'm surprised no one's mentioned yet, and maybe I'm not in the right place with this, but I just think one of the biggest in ideas is to try to embrace a more reliable, faster speed internet for businesses and for residents and everything. There's a lot of studies that have been done and a lot of different waves of the future coming in, and Tempe's always been innovative with this type of technology. And I remember back in in 2005, 2006, they gave a good go at it with the the free Wi-Fi they offered in the neighborhoods back in 05, 06. It didn't work out very well, but it was definitely cutting edge, and no one else was talking about it at that time. I really think it's time for Tempe to start talking again about how can we really embrace the internet and the internet future. And I think that would help both small businesses, large businesses, and I think it'd be a big economic gain to like be on the forefront of that.
Thank you. Ms. Cater.
Yes, this is such an important question. My number one stated goal is to reduce the number of families living in poverty in Tempe. The 2040 general plan that was approved by voters, but only by a slight majority, doesn't use the term poverty once. And I think this is a problem. I think we need to talk about families that are struggling, and as a community that considers ourselves compassionate and caring about each other, we have to talk about the families that need the most help. I think the best thing about focusing on this is that when we all do better, we all do better. And so investing in families, supporting local businesses, increasing job training programs, reducing costs for families means they will be more successful, and then we will all be more successful. And I also think it's really important to talk about individuals that are experiencing homelessness. I want to bring back the humanity into that conversation and talk about what we can do to find the root cause of that issue. And oftentimes that's one paycheck away. People are one paycheck away from homelessness, and I think we can, that will make the whole city better if we can try and address that root cause.
Thank you. Ms. Arredondo Savage.
Well, I would say first and foremost, I've been involved in our family business that has been located and operating in Tempe for over 30 years. And I really do believe that small to medium-sized business is really the heartbeat of Tempe. We've done an excellent job of luring in some larger businesses, creating new jobs. But I think it's important to go back and remember how important and the impact that our small to medium-sized businesses had. We recently just did a business survey and found out that the majority of businesses that have been in Tempe over 10 years, and the majority of those businesses that have been here for over 10 years have 10 or fewer employees. So I think it's just really important that we work to build those relationships with those businesses to make sure that they continue to be successful and thrive in Tempe, whether it's through the permitting process, whether it's customer service. I think that's something that we can definitely build on. And my other thing would be our youth workforce, that we're giving every opportunity that we can to our young individuals so they become the next quality educated workforce that this community needs.
Thank you. Let's go back to our audience. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Peggy Maroney. I've been a resident for 37 years, and I'm a member of the Tempe Historical Preservation Foundation, and I am so pleased at many of your responses in terms of supporting historic preservation. I have a specific question, however. There are many people who own historic properties in Tempe, and they are our stewards of our community cultural resources. Please tell us if you would support a program of capital improvement program, historic preservation assistance, similar to the Tempe Neighborhood Grant Program that provides other neighborhood improvements. And if so, how would you do that?
Thank you. Let's start this round with Ms. Kuby.
Yes, I would support such a program. That's very exciting to me, and I would think I would look at supporting it through restricted land use revenue and leases that come into the city. We see it just from the sale, the flipping of the State Farm building. I think Tempe realized, what was it, $2 million from that sale? So we can look at opportunities when we have development come in and the money starts to come back to us. We can look at opportunities to kind of reinvest in the community. We have the program where we relieve people of paying permit fees if a building is older than, I think, 1972. So I would be interested in looking at that opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Vega.
Yes, I think that would be a fantastic program, and I think there's a few ways that we can probably look at doing this. Growth in our community through development allows us to invest in quality of life programs and the preservation of our community. So I think those are some of the programs that we need to be looking at for the long term for Tempe, and to keep those designations on properties in the event that a homeowner of a historic location leaves or moves or sells, that the integrity of the history of that residence or building is preserved for the long term. And so I think that's a really important a thing that we need to designate for properties, and definitely a program. I'm not familiar enough on all the funding options that we would be able to have, but definitely an intense look at that would be warranted.
Ms. Arredondo Savage.
Sure, I'm definitely always open to different ideas to see what we can do to encourage people to, preserve the properties the way that they so choose. I think some of our challenges sometimes are a lot of those residents, the people that are living on them may not be the homeowner. And so being able to connect with that homeowner directly sometimes is a little bit of a challenge, and I think that's something that we can do better. Justin mentioned a program that we did for downzoning, and one of the ways that we encourage people to do it was we waived some fees. So I think with some creative thinking and thinking outside of the box, there may be some incentives that we could do, or at least create the awareness so people know that that's even an option if that is something that they so choose to do.
Ms. Adams.
Yes, I'm in favor of that. I think that if we preserve our history, it's so important in the buildings. And I think we want to have a line item for that in our budget, so we would just have a line item for the history.
That was a short minute.
Yeah, there was a short minute. For sustainability, and I know at the city we have a historical fund for our buildings, and we have special people that work. They're specially qualified to work on the historical buildings. So I think that we have a lot of knowledge there, and we could transfer that into more public funds for the historic. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cater.
That's definitely something I would support. Like I said, as a native of Tempe, preserving the history is so important to me. And so I think a lot of the ideas mentioned are really important. Using the historic fund, using incentives to be able to support the preservation of those places, and really encouraging the residents and the owners to come to the table and give their feedback so that we can ensure that we're preserving that history. I think it's an excellent idea, and I would love to learn more about it as well.
And Mr. Stewart.
I think the idea is just beyond excellent. It amazes me. I have a very good friend of mine who recently purchased one of the old railroad houses over on Farmer that was an R3 zoned house that most likely would have been demolished. It was in horrible condition. It would have been demolished and probably turned into some sort of multi-family housing there because of its zoning. He was fortunate enough to be able to be a cash buyer and come in and buy this property and clean it up. It looks beautiful now, and there's only 3 more railroad houses on Farmer that are still available. 2 of them burnt down, and it's just amazing that a neighbor was able to do this. Now, I think we have to find ways to find some sort of fiscal incentives to be able to allow investors and local investors into these properties to preserve them and fix them up. I don't have the exact answers right now where we'd find that, but Tempe has found in the past money for the Marianne Quarter grants and other grants like that. I think we could do that for this.
Okay, I need to take a break and discuss with the sponsors. I've been told that one of my responsibilities is to watch the overall clock, that we can go past 90 minutes. So would you like to continue, and would the audience like to continue? We don't even ask them. We'll just either go or not.
I'm good.
We're good? Okay, we will continue on for another 2 hours. All right.
Dinner. We're going to order pizza?
Let us go back to our sponsor, Carrie Waters from the Arizona Republic, with a question.
All right, this one came from a reader, kind of changes direction. It's from an ASU student. It says, if elected, how would you connect with ASU students and ensure that they're engaged in the larger community?
And let us begin this round with Ms. Arredondo Savage.
No problem. In fact, being an alumni from ASU and the fact that they are in our backyard, we are ASU and they are us, it's very important that we build relationships with the students. And actually, I believe it's next week, the mayor and I are actually going over to USG, which is the undergraduate student government, to sit down and talk with some of those students, just to talk a little bit about what's happening in the city, what can the city council do to help you, what kind of questions might you have. So I think little things like that, utilizing those different opportunities, building relationships, not only with the people that work at ASU, but really the different organizations and the clubs that are on campus are the ways that we can really make a difference and build the relationships with the students too.
Thank you. Ms. Cater.
Yeah, great question. I think one of the things that I think would be actually really exciting is to do some type of voter engagement with ASU students. Some students obviously are maybe registered back where they live, but a lot of students move here and maybe don't re-register. in Tempe, but they live in Tempe. And so, you know, we don't necessarily, the city council doesn't necessarily have control over ASU specifically, but we do affect their daily lives because they live here. And so I would think it would be really exciting to increase voter engagement with ASU students.
Thank you. Ms. Adams.
Yes, I earned my Master's of Social Work from ASU many, many moons ago now, and so Go Devils. I'm a huge supporter of ASU. When I was in Public Works, we had a recruitment outreach committee, and what we would do is we would partner with ASU engineering students because we were short on engineers, and that continues to be a problem. And so we would bring them over and have them work in the city and get experience. And it would also help us because those students are very bright and they have cutting edge technology that a lot of times we didn't have because we'd been out in the field for a long time. So to have those partnerships with ASU and increase the internships, I think would be really effective, and also it would help the city and it would help ASU and the students. So I think we can have a nice bridge there by really getting the internship programs institutionalized.
Thank you. Ms. Kuby.
Kind of a softball question for me. Because my job at ASU at the Julia Wrigley Global Institute of Sustainability is to work with students and engage the community. And so I've been mentoring students for over 20 years in my role at ASU. And there is not a day that goes by when I'm sitting in my office where a student doesn't come in to talk to me about an idea they have for a city council or for the city to pursue. One of those ideas was an idea called humble houses, to develop 13 humble houses in an infill area in the Gentilly neighborhood in Tempe. And that project now has been awarded to the Newtown Development Corporation, and students are going to stay involved in that project and build 600 square foot houses that are sustainable and built with the cleanest energy, and I'm very excited about that. We also, Masters of Sustainable Solutions students are working throughout the city. We have a graduate of the School of Sustainability who is our sustainability manager and heads the Office of Sustainability here at the city, and I'm proud of that role.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
This is going to be a really important role that comes up in the next 40 years. It is already, but in the next 40 years, as we see the Novus program from ASU going forward and the Urban Core project from Tempe going forward, they're going to be kind of hopefully hand in hand and have some great synergy and communication between the two projects, and that's going to affect ASU students and it's going to affect neighborhoods. And one of the things that we can always do is just, we have great neighborhood association programs, and we can just make sure that the neighborhood association programs reach out to new neighbors and make sure that to include renters, to include those that might be only there for like 6 months, include those for 12 months, and get them involved and get them to know their other neighbors. And I think that's really key. As soon as the ASU student feels welcomed within the neighborhood, they're going to feel part of that neighborhood. And I think that's just a big key to it, is to make sure they're included into the neighborhood where they're moving into.
Thank you. And Ms. Vega.
Thank you. I'm also a Sun Devil, two-time Sun Devil, in fact. My mom was a Sun Devil. She's in the audience. My husband works at Arizona State in the engineering department. So definitely value the relationship that Tempe has with ASU. I think it's integral, and I think we're seeing improvements every day on the relationships. In fact, I used to train a group of activists in ASU on how to register voters and have gone to polling places to kind of monitor and help students with voting and things like that. So there are opportunities to help engage students. But I think, again, our job as council members is to go out to the community, and that includes ASU. In fact, I've discussed with some of my previous professors, conversations about getting involved in civic participation and things like that. And council members should be going out and having those conversations, much like Robin mentioned earlier. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to be able to do that. And certainly involve them in projects with the city, so that we can make sure we're getting all the ideas that are out there and not just what we're used to in the city.
Thank you. Let's go back to the audience. Yes, sir. You want to come up to the mic?
Hi, my name is David. I'm an ASU student, and I'm a biological sciences major and a millennial. Climate change is of a particular issue, not just a city, but a nationwide issue, and will have a profound impact on my life. My question is that since Tempe is a desert city where water management and management of natural resources is entwined with climate change and global warming, what have you done, or what are you thinking about when it comes to intergenerational intergenerationality about water management and management of natural resources and the urban heat problem that we have here in the city.
Thank you. And let's have Ms. Adams begin this round of responses.
Sure. So I've done a lot with sustainability. I'm actually Envision rated certified. So what does that mean is when we have construction projects, we look at all of the sustainability factors before you build a building, including reaching out to the community members and how they feel about the buildings. So sustainability is very, very important. I actually served on the National Center for Sustainability through the American Public Works Association for 6 years. I was one of 10 North American individuals to be able to serve on that. So sustainability is very important. We have a terrible heat island problem. It's going to continue to get hotter. Our infrastructure needs to be built different now because of the heat. So our old HVACs and things like that are not going to work like they used to because they're going to go through their pipes and all of that much faster with this heat. So we need to really look at the whole picture and how we address this terrible problem.
Thank you. Ms. Arredondo Savage.
Sure. I mean, I think you asked a question specifically about water and what we're doing in regards to conservation. And I think from the city's perspective, we've done a few things, not only with the way we operate and the way we use water, especially like some of our golf courses. I mean, that was really important to make sure that we do that better. And the way we water our parks, very important that we make some changes in that. And we've been able to do that. But we've also gone out to our residents to try to encourage them to be as efficient and effective as they can be when it comes to water usage. So we've created some different incentives so they can create smart meters on their sprinklers, or they can convert their landscaping if they so choose. Just different ways so they can be innovative, even from like low flow toilet rebates, things like that that we continue to do. And we actually see a really good response from a lot of our residents that want to do the right thing. And we just need to make sure that we're giving them the tools to do that.
Mr. Stewart.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Robin said because the city of Tempe has done a great job with like water conservation rebates. Out of all the cities out there in the valley right now, you look at the list of rebates that are available through the city of Tempe when it comes to like xeriscaping rebates, smart water rebates, low flow toilet rebates. They're incredible, and we're very fortunate to live here to have those. I also applaud City Council for working on the urban forest shade program that's going on right now. I mean, we are in a heat island, and if we can add more trees and make sure they're low water use trees and native trees, and it's just so to reduce the effect of the heat island, I'm all for it, and I'm also all for it to continue on preserving the old growths that we have. That you walk into some of these neighborhoods and you definitely do like notice a decrease in temperature, and I think a lot of these old growths are important to make sure that A, for the character of the area, and B, like it adds to our shade program that we're also trying to extend.
Thank you. Ms. Vega.
Sure. Yeah, I concur. I love the idea of more urban forestation. I think that's so important. That addresses so many issues, not just the heat island. It's a health issue. It's a walkability issue. It's a livability issue. So I think that's something we really need to look at. I also think incentivizing conservation is really important. When we put the measurements and the metrics in place for people to conserve, and we make it an attractive thing to conserve, that's what people will do. When it's more affordable to conserve, and I'm so glad to see sustainability and conservation becoming the trend. It's what's popular now, and but it's a trend that I think we're seeing all over the country, all over the world. And so and things like the smart meters, I'm a big fan of those. I recently had to pay a 4x water bill because I had a leak I didn't know about, and something like that would have been really, really helpful, and also goes towards conservation.
Thank you. Ms. Adams.
Already went.
I answered this question.
I can add more to it.
I've come up with more ideas.
You did. That's true. Ms. Cubey.
Climate change is the most important issue of our age. It's the defining issue of our age. And as someone from the baby boomer generation, I want to say, I am sorry, David. The package that we handed to you, there's ways that we can fight, though. And one of the ways is to say, as a city, cities are responsible for 70% of global carbon emissions. And so we can stand up with other cities and say, we're still in. And Tempe right now is working on a 100% renewable energy goal by 2035. We're having a lot of public comment. We're going to be deciding in February. So that's really important for us to do our part for the global climate signal. As far as the microclimate signal, Maple Ash is 12 degrees cooler on a given summer day than other parts of Tempe. And so it's really important that we increase our shade. You've heard it here today. As far as water goes, it's also, we have to avoid the costs of future draws down from the Colorado River and from Lake Mead. We need to plan for a future. We need inclining block structures for our water conservation, because if we don't, we're going to be faced with enormous costs like California has been.
Thank you. Ms. Cater.
Thank you for the question, David. As a millennial, albeit on the opposite end of you, I share the concern about sustainability and water, and now raising my family in Tempe. This is such an important issue for our time. I echo the good things that Tempe has done related to water, and the sustainability initiatives that Lauren has championed, I think, are awesome. I just think we have to do more and continue to focus on renewable energy, sustainable transportation, urban forestry, increasing our shade. And the wonderful thing about all of these things is that they help working families. When you do all of these things, you end up reducing costs for family. And of course, that's my ultimate goal. And so sustainability is the best practice for our health and for our economy too.
Thank you. And let us go back. I was so proud of my matrix for the random. I thought I was getting through it. Back to our sponsors, Dawn Hawking.
Should political party affiliation play a role in local politics?
Ms. Cater, I'll start with you.
Sure.
You ended up, but we'll start.
No problem. No, I don't believe so. I think the beauty of this experience and this election and Tempe is that it's nonpartisan. And I think we can see that in the nonpartisan way that our council gets things done for the people that live here. I think people are frustrated with the partisanship nationally, and I think we can see the evidence shows that nonpartisan nature of our city elections is effective, and I think we should continue on that path.
Thank you. Ms. Kuby.
So there's a bill before the legislature that would actually require city elections, all offices, to be partisan, which I think would be a big step backwards. And when I was elected, I put party politics aside to do good things for my community, to make life better for residents. And I'm really proud of the work I've done. Donna Savage and I worked on an equal pay program that is now considered a model program in the nation. And that's because we put politics aside and just do what's good for the community, do what's good for our residents.
Ms. Vega.
Yes, it's one of the things that attracted me to running for city council for sure is there's so much divisiveness in our politics today, and we've gotten away from civil discourse. And I think this is something I personally have been knocking on doors in Tempe for a decade already on various issues. But I think what people are saying at the door is they still ask. They still ask, well, what party are you aligned to? And how do you feel about this or that person? And I've actually seen an increase in some hostility from people that if you're not for this, then I'm not for you, and a lot of emboldened conversations that have been happening, and it's really troubling to see. So I think putting partisanship aside to do the right thing for Tempe, to listen to our residents, is what's really important. And I think it's so important for our city that we make sure that we do the good that our citizens are asking for us to do here in Tempe.
Thank you. Let's try it again. Ms. Adams.
Yes. I do not believe that partisan politics has a place in our city elections. It's very important that we not go down that road. We have to be able to have diversity of thoughts and communications, and it seems like we've just really gotten the silos with the different parties, and I don't think that's effective, and especially at a city council level, that's not necessary, and I do not support it at all.
Ms. Arredondo Savage.
No, I definitely do not support party politics in any city, local election, school boards, or whatever that may be. I think it's just really important that our residents find the right people that are a good fit for the city, that have an open mind, that have some diverse experiences and knowledge. And what they can do is be able to work together, to be able to collaborate and do what's right for the residents of Tempe and keep Tempe first, first and foremost.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
Yeah, I agree with everyone else. I think there's no place for party politics at a local level. We already see how divided the country is right now and how difficult it is to get stuff done at the country level. at a federal level, at a state level, any level where there's a party involved. I mean, we're just coming out of a governmental shutdown, and I'd prefer not to see the city of Tempe enter a governmental shutdown. I think we have a multitude of different types of political beliefs out there within the city of Tempe, and I just think every single council person needs to represent and hear all those different beliefs. And so I think the best way to get away from, like, to include everyone, make sure everyone's voice is heard, is without the party's involvement.
Thank you. And let's try one more from the audience. Ma'am, please.
Hello, my name is Linda Knutson. Thank you for taking my question. I'm only a first-generation Tempe, but I love Tempe and I don't plan to go anywhere. This morning there was a very disturbing report on NPR about the greater Phoenix area, and it talked about homelessness, and that one of the biggest rises in homelessness in the Phoenix area is with seniors. With that remark, my question to each of you is, what innovative yet practical solution or idea do you have for addressing homelessness in Tempe?
And let's start with, thank you, Mr. Stewart.
I mean, that's a great question. I know all of us here are very passionate about the homeless and care about the homeless. I think I'm pretty sure most of us here at this table, time being, are going out and doing the point in time count tomorrow that are available to do it tomorrow. With that being said, a lot of the homeless solutions that we're looking at and we're seeing right now are centuries old, and it really is going to come down to innovation, but finding ways with innovation, with ideas that have worked moving forward. I would really like to see, you know, shelter. I do think we do need some shelters for temporary homeless. I think we need to have locker banks for them, shower services, job training, and you know, a lot of that's already done. But I think there's a way to make sure that the outreach is done properly, and the awareness to bring them in. I mean, I think the Tempe Housing First program is a great program.
Thank you. Ms. Adams.
Yes, there has been a great increase in homeless throughout the valley, not just in Tempe. And I know that many people, when I've knocked on doors, they've been commenting on the homeless situation and their concerns. I have a master's in social work degree from ASU, so I'm familiar with working with other services, partnering with people, other agencies and things like that, and we need to do a lot of that with this homeless situation. Also, we need to have a valley-wide approach. It just can't be Tempe. It has to be a valley-wide approach to the homelessness. And we need to get the police more involved also in our communities, so people feel safe and that they help with the homeless, and they are. The city of Tempe has added officers for the homeless. I think that we need to reinstitute the park rangers that helped a lot with homeless, and they can help get the homeless services that they need. And the Housing First program in Tempe, we need to develop a Housing First program. The state of Utah developed that, and they reduced homelessness by 91%. So it can be done. First time I hit the buzzer tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Arredondo Savage.
Thanks, Linda, for the question. And I think we hear it a lot, and obviously I 100% agree that this is not just a Tempe issue. This is a regional issue, and it's something that we need to try to solve together if we possibly can. The city of Tempe has done things a little bit differently than we've done in the past. We've actually kind of created a working group that does incorporate the police and the fire and social services and Public Works, really trying to work together to create solid solutions. We've implemented another park ranger, park officer to actually go out and go out and make connections with those individuals that are in the park, maybe doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and also some enforcement too. I mean, we're able to do a little bit more enforcement, but compassionate enforcement. So I think we have to remember there's a lot of issues that are underlining when it comes to people that are homeless, and we have to make sure that we're addressing those, whether they're mental health issues, substance abuse, out of work or displacement. Those are the things too that we need to make sure that we're trying to solve, and also actually having affordable housing is one of the biggest keys.
Ms. Cater.
This is such an important issue to me as someone who works with people with disabilities and does a lot of work with individuals who have mental illness. We know that that's a big part of why many people become homeless, and also that many people are on the verge of homelessness, and it's one car payment or one health care bill that turns them into a situation where they're now out of a home. So I think, as I mentioned before, bringing the humanity into the discussion is paramount to me. I think talking about it as the homelessness problem or issue that affects our parks is just the wrong way to talk about the issue. And people are homeless for so many different reasons. We have to get to the root causes of homelessness, and often it's our veterans, it's our seniors who are experiencing mental illness, who have lost their job. And so we need a better shelter options in Tempe, and I think job training opportunities, and certainly showering and being able to be clean. But we need to have a multifaceted approach to this and think of these individuals as people, which they are.
Thank you. Ms. Kuby.
So I worked with homelessness issues with Bobby Kennedy's daughter, Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, back in Massachusetts when we first saw the homelessness population explode in the 1980s. And the innovative solution is housing first. And we established a Housing First working group, and we were able to achieve, with Mercy Maricopa, we're able to house 25, half of our severely mentally ill homeless population. And we've taken a stop in our meeting, not because it isn't an urgent and terrific problem, but we've taken a stop to, our city manager has gone to the other East Valley cities and say, we need to get together and build permanent supportive housing with a wraparound services, and we need to find a location. We're zeroing in on a location now. We need to find a location where we can all work together as a region, because this is a serious issue that just can't be amended by one city. There's a lot we've done to increase funding for the homeless. It's not enough, but I also recognize that it's a quality of life issue. There's a very, we have compassionate enforcement, or our police, and we have to kind of always balance enforcement with just trying to do the right thing for our homeless population.
Thank you. Ms. Vega.
Yes, this is definitely something I could talk about for hours. So I echo the Housing First option, but I would also say that we have a central database for homeless issues, and I would love to see this technology expanded to include those wraparound services to really address those root causes, and make sure that our homeless neighbors are getting to the resources that they need. So in our community needs assessment, we found that lack of access to accessible, affordable housing is one of the main issues that we're seeing with human services in Tempe. It's definitely something we need to address regionally, because it's got to be a multi-municipality collaboration for sure. I love programs like Tempe Works that Councilmember Keating has worked on with the homeless working group, and I think Councilmember Navarro. But I think that having this, this central database that's enhanced to address those reasons for homelessness is really, really important.
Thank you. And back to our sponsor table, Carrie Waters from the Arizona Republic.
I'll take it a different direction. Just can you talk to what practical experiences that you have combing through development agreements, complex financial documents, and then what role you think as a council member that you would play as kind of that accountability watchdog voice?
Let's start with Ms. Kuby.
Well, I have experience from being a first-term council member and looking through those documents. And but to me, I'm always thinking about how does this impact our working families? How does it impact the poor? We have not just a 21% poverty rate in Tempe, it's 31%, I think, for children. I know you know that. So that's my experience. And when I look at, when you look at the Omni project, my concern looking through all those documents and agreements that we didn't really have any agreement to build that in a way that was according to our values, to build in a way that would embrace apprenticeship programs and embrace developing a workforce economy. And so I sort of take a different look when I look at those development agreements. And these agreements, they go on for the negotiation goes on for many moons. It's, many months we're dealing with this. And I always try and look at it from a point of view of how can we build in a way that reflects the values of our city.
Thank you. Ms. Cater.
So I don't personally have a ton of experience yet combing through development documents, but I have a lot of experience as an attorney combing through very lengthy, complicated and confusing documents, and sometimes writing confusing documents as well. So that's what I do. I do a lot of legislative work in my job as well at the state capitol, and so I've been a part of reviewing policy and also drafting policy and legislation. So I think my expertise in that area lends itself perfectly well to being on the council. And as being a watchdog, I also consider that's basically what I do as an advocate for people with disabilities. I'm advocating for our most vulnerable populations, for people living in poverty with disabilities, and I really take that to heart, that they come to me and I'm a last resort for them, and I try and help them make their lives better, and I would like to do that as a council member as well.
Thank you. Ms. Vega.
Definitely some experience combing through financial documents. So I have an executive MBA, which means not just a holistic view of business, the ability to go look at things from a 20,000-foot level and also dig down into the nitty-gritty details. This is something that I've done throughout my business career, doing process improvement. I'm a Six Sigma Green Belt as well, so assessing processes and really looking at every step of everything that you do to make improvements for efficiency and effectiveness. This is how I've made my career. But also I think, you know, in the MBA program, you do managerial accounting and finance. So it's not about generating the numbers, it's about really taking a look and filling in the blanks and really assessing, you know, what's missing, what's going on with an organization, and doing kind of the forensic work of that to really make plans for the future. So, so I lean on this skill very, very heavily and again, have made a career out of it.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
I already am the watchdog. That's why I'm here at this table right now. Being a neighborhood advocate and being part of Tempe Neighborhoods Together, this is what I do. I go through planning documents. I look at agreements with other Tempe Neighborhood Together members, with other neighborhood leaders, and we're trying to make sure we're getting the best deal that we can get for the neighborhood and think of innovative and great solutions to bring back to city staff and to bring to council. And there's ways we can do this, and we see things, and there's solutions that we can find, but we're the ones currently right now, when we see something we don't like, that we're holding council to the fire. We're the ones that will be down here. We saw some of them here earlier tonight asking some questions. We'll be down here in City Hall after reading all the documents saying, what's going on? And we'll get honest answers, and we usually figure it out. And so I have a lot of experience looking through these documents already.
Thank you. Ms. Adams.
Yes, I have extensive knowledge in working with plans and things like that because I was the facilities maintenance manager for the city of Tempe. So we had 96 buildings that we managed, and $5 million, up to $5 million every year of capital improvement projects. So we had to look at all those plans, see what we needed to do, and then make the money work and deliver them. And so I'm very, very comfortable with the plans and have seen more than I wanted to. And but I enjoy it, and it's fun. And our engineering staff is incredible in the city, and they do a great job. And also our development services staff is excellent. So they do a great job reading the plans. And so anyway, sorry.
Yeah, you're right. You were right.
There's a little controversy, sorry. We just thought, is it okay to say something?
Sure. Very quickly.
We're doing our first facilities plan, I think, in Tempe history right now. We've approached that. So
we had a 10-year plan when I was in facilities. Mm-hmm. So we would look at it was 5 years to council, but we would do our whole 10-year plan with facilities.
Thank you.
So.
And finally, Ms. Arredondo Savage.
Great. Well, and I think we were kind of referencing the independent audit that happened this last year that's never happened before. So that's what it was relevant to. But yes, Carrie, I've had more experience on these documents than I never even imagined I would. So never really even thought the importance of not only just understanding the development, the documents itself, but being able to be open and talking to the developers and talking to the residents, listening to the DRC, which is our design review commission that reviews all the projects and gives us feedback, and then the neighborhoods, and being able to do what's best for the community as a whole. And so you got to be able to be open-minded, you got to be able to listen, and you got to be able to compromise, because sometimes you're not always going to get what everybody wants, but you want to be able to create the best product that you definitely can. And what I found in the city of Tempe is I feel like we can be a little picky. You know, we're a highly coveted area, and people want to come here. So I think that we should demand the highest quality product and the development that we can definitely get.
Thank you. Now we are up against the clock, so we gave only 30 seconds for some opening introductions, but I'd like to give all of you a minute to summarize in any way that you see fit. And we started with the position one, so we'll begin this round with Jennifer Adams.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. I appreciate you participating in this process. This is a very critical election for the city of Tempe. When I was 10 years old, I began delivering Meals on Wheels with my mother, and I learned how much I liked helping people and the value of service. I spent 29 years at the city of Tempe in 3 different departments: community services, internal services, and public works. I'm passionate about Tempe. I know it's a great city, and I know we can make it even better. I'm good with money. I operate a $7.5 million operating budget and up to $5 million in capital improvement projects every year. I want to empower neighborhoods in decision-making processes so you will have a voice and a seat at the table, and promote small businesses as they are the heart of our community, and improve our infrastructure. We need to make sure our drinking water is safe and that our firefighters have working hydrants when they respond to fires. I'm retired, and I will spend all of my time working for you, the residents of Tempe. Please make an investment in your future by voting for me, adamsfortempe.com.
Thank you. Ms. Sarah Cater.
I'm a daughter of an immigrant. My dad came to this country after the Second World War. He is the child of 2 Holocaust survivors, and they survived one of the biggest atrocities in human history. And growing up knowing this, I had to grapple with how this was possible as a young child. I came to 2 main conclusions. One is that some people are intent on doing awful things, but 2 is that only these awful things can occur when many good people are silent and do nothing. And I learned from an early age, don't be silent, don't do nothing, stand up to injustice. That's why I've committed my life to public service and representing our most vulnerable populations, and that's why I'm running for Tempe City Council to serve my hometown. I hope you'll check out more information on my website, caterfortempe.com, and I would love to meet with any of you individually if you'd like as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Genevieve Vega.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you to the Chamber and to the Arizona Republic for hosting us today. Thank you for everyone who hung in with us until the very end. So, I'm running for Tempe City Council to continue my service to the city. I would not be here if it wasn't for a brave Green Beret who rescued an orphan Vietnamese girl who was wounded, and he carried her through the jungle and nursed her back to health and decided to adopt her. That little girl was the first Vietnamese adopted in the United States. She grew up with more opportunity than she could have imagined. She graduated from Arizona State. She lives here in Tempe, and she's my mom, and she's here in the audience today. And I'm running to continue this service because I know what it's like to raise a special needs child here in Tempe, to have a McClintock high schooler, to run a business in Tempe, to work on human services in this city. I've spent a lot of time in this city to help make this city a better place for all of our families, and I'd like to continue that service. Again, my name is Genevieve Vega. Please consider me for a vote. Thank you.
Justin Stewart.
I want to thank everyone that came out tonight, all the hosts, the Arizona Republic, Tempe Chamber of Commerce, all the council members, and all the council candidates up here in the audience. You know, I moved into Tempe in 2005. I took a brief stay away for a couple of years because my wife was getting her grad degree, and the place we wanted to come back to was where we live now. We wanted to come back to our neighborhood. We wanted to come back to Tempe. It was our goal to come back to Tempe. And now that I've been there for the past 5 years helping out with the neighborhood, I want to make sure that the people that are there currently in my neighborhood and other neighborhoods get to stay in Tempe and don't end up in Phoenix or Chandler or other places, nothing against them, but just in other places. But if they want to stay in Tempe and have their heart in Tempe, I want to make sure that I can put a voice on the table at the council table to make sure they get to stay. And that's what's most important. My friends, I've seen them leave, and I want to keep them here. And please consider voting for me. You can visit my website, justinfortempe.com.
Thank you. And Robin Arredondo Savage.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. I've really, it's been an honor to be the vice mayor of this really incredible community. I love using all my different experiences, my relationships, to be able to make some collaborative efforts and some really great initiatives and programs that I believe have been very impactful in this community. Our Veterans Initiative is so comprehensive and one of the best in the state of Arizona. We've been able to create really solid partnerships with our education partners and a program called College Connect Tempe, really working on our youth workforce program, and also really acknowledging the aerospace industry in the city of Tempe. And I just want to continue to do that work and build on some of those successes. I've loved the opportunity to not only just talk about some of the things that I've done here, but also the things that I want to continue to do. And that's really all about neighborhoods. Make sure that we have solid public safety. I want to kind of set the record straight when it comes to our crime rate in the city of Tempe and what's happening with our fire hydrants. And I hope that you will contact me for questions. I hope I can count on your vote on March 13th. Robin, for Tempe.com.
And Lauren Kuby.
So in local government, we work really hard to improve the lives of our residents, and I believe that we're succeeding in Tempe. I know that we can do better. I don't mean to say we can't do better, but in my time on the council, I think you could say that I've been seen as a woman who gets stuff done. I feel really empowered to work with communities, with neighborhoods, with residents, with ASU students and faculty and staff in order to bring this wealth of knowledge and expertise that we have to make our city a better place to live. And I think our city is leading not just the state, but in some areas the country in some of the efforts that we've done. When you look at equal pay, when you look at our free pre-K program, we're not afraid to take a step outside the box. And sometimes we get squashed by the state government, but we keep pushing. And one area is in campaign finance reform. And you're going to get to vote on March 13th, the very first initiative that will require dark money groups to reveal their sources. I'm proud that Tempe will be voting on this issue. I urge your support for that issue as well. And you can go to QB for Council to learn more about me. Thank you very much.
Well, by golly, we made it. That concludes our 2018 Tempe City Council Candidate Forum, co-sponsored by the Tempe Ahwatukee Republic, that's AZ Central and azcentral.com, and the Tempe Chamber of Commerce. My thanks to all of the candidates for undergoing the grilling tonight. And regardless of how you may feel about any of the contestants, we should all acknowledge and applaud the effort, determination, and sacrifice it takes to campaign and serve in public office today. I also want to recognize our audience for coming out and for their thoughtful and stimulating questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of you. Hopefully, though, you found the forum valuable and heard responses that will aid in making a more informed and sound decision when you cast your vote. After all, in the end, you are the judge of this election. To the forum sponsors and their representatives, a special thank you to Carrie Waters from the Arizona Republic and Dawn Hocking, Board Chair of the Tempe Chamber of Commerce. And thanks to Carrie Daniels, State Government Relations Associate at the Dorn Policy Group, for her precise clock watching and judicious, diligent dinging. And Suki Janke over in the corner there, she helped get everybody in order, and we appreciate that and want to recognize Ann Gill, who is the CEO of the Chamber, and Greg Wolf, who helped us put it all together from Channel 11. Thank you, Greg. So what happens next? Because there are just 3 available council seats and 6 candidates for that office, the election will be determined on March 13th. No general election. But in addition to the council races, you'll be asked to vote on 3 initiatives. Proposition 402, which is the Papago Park Preserve Charter Amendment, Proposition 403, Campaign Finance Reform, and Proposition 404, the Permanent Expenditure Base Adjustment, the first since 2008. All of that information you can find in packets that will be sent out and also on the city clerk's page. 2018, Tempe finds itself at a crossroads as it transitions from what once was primarily a university town into a dynamic business and economic center. With more than 180,000 residents, the city continues to grow, but not in its traditional way. Since 2000, expansion has become more vertical and dense. This philosophy calls for careful planning and vision so that as Tempe evolves, it can retain the unique character and elements that have long defined our community. That's why who we elect to lead in this city is critical to its future. Tonight you heard differing opinions, ideas, leaving you to be the judge on whom we should be electing to office. The candidates are doing their best. Now it's up to you. You have until February, well, the early ballots will go out on February 10th. The general election is March 13th, and the deadline for voter registration is March 12th. If I got all of that right. And this will be Tempe's first ballot by mail election. So there really is no excuse for not voting. So with all of that, thank you for coming out. Thank you for who have been watching on television from the Tempe City Council chambers. Wow, I almost got through it. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Big.
Thank you, appreciate it, great job.